my name is Jamie Rue, and today I'm going to talk about why openings matter. A couple things. One, it's super hot in my room, and also ignore traffic sounds. So if you see me like pouring sweat and or if you hear like honking, ignore it. I'm in New York and I don't have AC. Second, I am going to be spoiling the first 2 chapters of this book, There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. This came out on September 26th, which is literally yesterday for me. So if you don't want the first 2 chapters spoiled, leave. So, the first chapter, you start out with this girl, her name is Haley, and she's the lead in her school play, Sweeney Todd. And she's just coming home from a rehearsal, and she's on the phone with the stage manager and one of her best friends, Brooke. And Brooke is complaining that the director wants to use fake blood and spray the first 3 rows of the audience with fake blood. Haley is complaining about the fact that, sadly, the dude who got the lead of Sweeney Todd can't really hit the notes and isn't doing so hot. I was a theater nerd. I was like, this is so exciting. I'm going to get to read about a theater horror, and they're putting on Sweeney Todd, which is like a really cool production to be doing that with, instead of like the standard Macbeth or whatever that you would probably associate with theater horror. But here we are, and I'm excited because this is gonna be great. And then, in the first chapter, Haley dies. And then the second chapter is about a girl named Makani and her friends, Alex and Darby, and Makani is pining after some guy named Ollie. And I'm like, I do not care at all about any of you. Take me back to Brooke. Take me back to this production of Sweeney Todd. I want to know the aftermath of Haley dying at the very least. I liked Haley as a character, but at the very least I want to go back to the Sweeney Todd production. No luck. This was just my life. I was furious. I read those first 2 chapters in June because I got a little pamphlet at BookCon this year, and I was so mad when I first read it that I just wasn't going to read this book because I wanted that theater horror really badly. I knew this was a horror book and I knew nothing else about it, so I was so pumped for this theater horror, and I was so let down. Full disclosure, I have now read the full book and I did like it. Second thing that I wanted to discuss on terms of book openings, I'm going to talk about The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding by Alexandra Bracken for 2 seconds, literally just the prologue of this book. The opening of this book, the way this book decides to open, a word from the malefactor. Light a candle and step close to the looking glass. Time is short and we cannot delay. In another time, in another world, you would not have been worth the slightest flicker of my gaze. However, even I cannot break the terms of our contract. I didn't want to read the rest of that. As soon as I read that, I wanted to just not read the book anymore because I associate that kind of opening with a very amateur style of writing. If you are addressing me directly or like addressing anyone directly in your prologue and trying to like create a sinister tone, stop. Just stop. Figure something else out. Figure anything else out. I have a friend who did this in her story, and it was just like, I don't want to read this anymore. Like, she added it as a afterthought. It had originally been good. Like, the opening originally was fine, and then she added that, and I was like, I would never read this. If I saw this in a bookstore, I would never pick it up. If I stumbled across it online, I would read the first line and give up. Like, I would never ever want to read this just because of this prologue. A bad first chapter can make or break your book. Please make sure that your first chapter is something that a reader wants to read. Make sure that it starts with your main character. Make sure that it's not cheesy. Make sure that it's not misleading. Stephanie Perkins misled her reader. The only reason I continued reading this book is because it was by Stephanie Perkins. If it had been written by like a debut author, if it had just been like an author I'd never heard of or something like that, and that had been my experience with this book, would have put it down. Would have never read anything of hers again. Would have not read the book. Would have probably told all my friends not to read it because it was terrible and misleading and blah 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 blah. So yeah, don't do that. Don't make your reader get really excited about a thing that you're not going to deliver on. If you are going to write your first chapter as a theater horror, you better freaking follow through on that theater horror, because that's what I wanted. If she had just started this with the second chapter where Makani is discussing Haley's death with her friends, and then she's like vaguely pining after Ollie, that would have been an okay opening. Sure, this first chapter was thrilling, it was exciting, and it was a really good hook. It was just also a really good hook for a different book. Because the book I thought I was going to read after reading the first chapter was not the book I ended up reading. And that's disappointing. I didn't care about Makani. I cared about Haley. Make your reader care about your main character in the first chapter. The first chapter is when the reader decides whether or not to get invested in your book. And if they decide to get invested and suddenly it becomes an entirely different book, that's a problem. So when you're writing your book, or if you're writing anything in general, be open with the reader. Don't try to create a facade of like this entire book is going to be this like thriller about like people getting murdered. Don't make it this amateurish thing trying to create a sinister atmosphere. Be open about what the book is, because if the reader is going to like the book, they're going to like the book the way it is, the contents of the actual novel, like inside. After the prologue, after this like weird opening filter that you've created, if they're going to like that, they are going to like it. But if you're going to create an opening or a filter that the reader falls in love with and then you don't follow through on, that's not going to work out for you. I am going to be putting out a review of this book within the next couple days. Look out for it. Sorry, this video was kind of ranty about this book. I did like the book. Don't mislead your readers when you're creating your first chapters. Bye!